What's up, college football fans? Seth Varnadore here this week without Collin Sherwin. He got caught up in some travel and I was having some internet issues, so I'm going to go it alone this week. We got 3 games again. Uh, some of the more interesting games of the weekend. Not a super stacked weekend, but some pretty good games nonetheless. We're going to kick off with a big game every year, Army-Navy. Then we'll go to Miami for North Carolina, Miami, and then we'll end up with the battle for Los Angeles, UCLA, and Southern Cal. So let's get started with Army and Navy. The spread at the time of recording, Army is a 7-point favorite. The over-under is at 38. So let's take a look at the numbers and kind of see where they might lead us for this game. So you look at the numbers and you can see that the Army defense is the standout unit in this game by a pretty good margin. The Navy offense has been pretty terrible this year. And you can especially see that a triple option team is not very good on offense when you look at their third downs. Those teams are usually pretty high up. You can see Army, even without a great offense, is 29th on third down success. Navy's 98th. So this is not a very good Navy team. One of the worst Navy teams we've seen in a while. And that shows up on the tape too. Let's look at the tape. So we know what we're going to get kind of from both teams offensively. We're going to get some triple option. Army is a dynamic quarterback. Probably a little bit better at the triple here. You have the quarterback almost like they're running rocket toss here, and he keeps it. It's like a quarterback counter almost. He's very dynamic. You see here against Georgia Southern. So this is against a team that runs their own version of the option, so you'd think they'd have a pretty decent idea how to defend it. Army was able to pull out a victory against them. Here's rocket toss, getting the ball on the edge, making a tough run for a touchdown. Navy hitting a trap. I mean, these guys, they're going to look pretty similar. The offenses aren't going to look very different. Navy's tried to throw the ball a little bit more this year because they're not really settled at quarterback. Sometimes they have success, as you see here, breaking off a big play. But this kind of stuff happens more often than not where you get an interception. Navy is not built to throw the ball, and this year they're not able to run the ball, so it makes it tough. Here, another big play on the ground. And then the fullback again creasing for another big play. Now that hasn't been really, neither team has been led by their offense. The Navy defense has been pretty bad all year. But the standout unit of this game, as we mentioned before, is going to be the Army defense. Here they are against Georgia Southern. Playing the option pretty well. See them come up and make a play on the screen here. And then again, playing the option really well against a pretty athletic Georgia Southern team. Navy's not going to be anywhere near as athletic as this team. So in that game, I think you definitely, when you look at everything, you look at the stats, how they line up. Navy's pretty bad on both sides of the ball. Army has a good quarterback for this system and a pretty good defense. So I think you'd want to lean Army here. I would take Army -7. I think they could win by double digits. And probably hold the Navy offense down. So I think 7's should be a good number for Army. So if you get something, I think under double digits, you want to take that on Army because I think they could win going away. Next up is North Carolina at Miami. Miami is a 3.5-point favorite at time of recording. The over-under is 67.5. The game is at Miami. Both these teams kind of different directions this year. North Carolina's probably underachieved a little bit, but they've had a decent season. Outside that loss to Florida State, it's kind of hasn't been too unexpected. Miami, it's hard to say for a Miami team, but they're actually kind of flying under the radar a little bit. Derek King is a great player. He's leading their offense. And they're actually have a pretty decent offense this year, whereas the last couple of years they've been terrible. So let's take a look at the numbers and kind of see how these two teams stack up. The North Carolina offense is the best unit in the game by a pretty decent margin here. Top 10 in the country in available yards percentage, yards per play, number 1 in explosiveness rate. And that's top, I think they're top 5 in both run and pass explosiveness. Miami's given up some explosive plays this year on the ground. So that might be a spot where North Carolina can take advantage. Turnover margin is kind of one they're really opposite in. Miami's +7. You got the turnover change. You're kind of thinking that's probably, how they play. No, North Carolina's -2 on the year. So turnovers, somewhat random, but they can be somewhat of a skill in certain situations. You can also just be a team that's turnover prone. Certain players are. All right, so let's look at the film. North Carolina defense has not been great. Here you see them dropping out, showing blitz, dropping out of it, getting a coverage sack here against Notre Dame. They were actually able to push the pocket pretty well against Notre Dame, and they're a good offensive line, but Ian Book made some great plays getting out of there. Here's one here. Ian Book has made some big plays here. Here's another run. He's a pretty good athlete, but he's not Derek King. So I think that's where you're watching this, you're thinking, okay, Derek King is a much better athlete than Ian Book. What's he going to do against this defense? But you see, there were 3 or 4 occasions here where North Carolina pushed the pocket and got pressure on Book against a really good offensive line. Miami's offensive line isn't nearly as good as Notre Dame's. So that'll be interesting to see if North Carolina is able to get pressure on the quarterback. What does Miami like to do offensively? Will they go fast? And they got back one of their big weapons, Brevin Jordan. Really good tight end. Derek King has a great rapport with him, even after missing a few games. Right there, kind of like a scissors look, and then you had the post coming underneath it. They go tempo, and they'll run the ball. Here against Duke, who was overmatched. Here's a little quarterback run. They're going to make life hard on you, and they're starting to hit some more shots down the field. But they're not an especially explosive offense. They have spurts of it, but they're not unbelievable. North Carolina, on the other hand, very explosive through the air and on the ground. They may have the best running back tandem in the country. And they've got this dude at quarterback. Howell can play. They're going to have the best probably receiver group that Miami's seen all year. And one of the best quarterbacks they've seen for sure. And he's not just a thrower. He can pull it and run a little bit. He's not a slug back there. He can move. But in their losses, they've given up pressure. And that's something that the Miami defense can do pretty well, is pressure the quarterback. A lot of times just with 4. They have pretty disruptive guys on the defensive line. They're going to pressure the quarterback. They're going to cause turnovers. That's their MO. So you're looking at this game. North Carolina comes in as an underdog, 3.5 points. I actually like North Carolina here. I just think their offense is so good. But this could also be a game that maybe goes over. Miami's defense, the numbers look pretty good, but you've also seen offenses put big numbers on them. Now, that may have been due to COVID and injuries and things of that nature. But this isn't I don't think this is the Miami defense of the past. I like North Carolina here, especially if I'm getting points. I think the quarterback matchup's pretty close. Usually when it's close, I like to lean toward the better quarterback. I think it's close. I'll take the points. Give me North Carolina +3.5. So now for our last game, we're going to go to Los Angeles for UCLA and USC. At time of recording, USC is a 3-point favorite with an over-under of 61.5. The Trojans are undefeated, and in other years, they'd be climbing the polls here and getting ready to make a playoff run. This year is strange and doesn't look like they're going to get enough games to even get in the conversation. They've got a talented quarterback in Slovis and a bunch of receivers. Let's take a look at the numbers and see how these teams stack up. When you look at the numbers here, UCLA has some pretty decent defensive metrics in certain areas. Yards per play, they're 23rd in the country. Not as good as you see on available yards. Not great on third downs, but pretty good at explosiveness. What's interesting is you look at USC, their yards per play number are higher, but their available yards number is much lower. So it's kind of an interesting contrast. USC, despite how good they've looked at times on offense, their metrics are not wild. Neither team is really explosive on offense, and UCLA actually does a pretty good job at stopping the explosives on defense. And they have a pretty attacking style of defense, which will be an interesting matchup with USC. So let's take a look. We'll start with the USC offense here. They kind of exploded, right? We showed they haven't been for the year really explosive, but this last game against Washington State, they were able to make some pretty big plays through the air and run out to a big lead. They've got some dynamic receivers. They've got a quarterback that can make a lot of throws, probably a future pro, it seems like. And they'll whip the ball around the field. They're not very good at running the football, and UCLA is not great at stopping the run. So that's going to be kind of a interesting matchup. Will USC even want to try to run the football? After their previous game, they said they didn't think they really need to try to run, so maybe they won't. But you see here, they can throw the ball pretty well. They've been kind of stuttering, sputtering, stop and start this year, playing games tighter to opponents than you think. And you see here's just a simple, you get an interesting look where you're showing a bunch of guys up front. You may get the line to all slide this way, it looks like, and you just cut one loose off the back edge. Kind of a weird mistake to make right there, but Washington State gave them a confusing look, which kind of is interesting because UCLA loves to bring pressure in exotic ways and brings guys. Against Arizona State, they got home a bunch. They're not afraid to bring the pressure and drop guys out in coverage and kind of do a lot of different looks here. You'll see, you look at the snap here, you got all these guys were at the line of scrimmage at the snap. The ball snapped, and you see how they disperse and cover and present weird looks for the quarterback. So they're gonna show kind of unique looks to USC. Here, you actually get this corner is going to come over the top of the routes and make the pick. So they're given kind of exotic looks, but if you're going to blitz that much, you can bust and get shots over the top. Arizona hit a couple. Here's a really nice play designed by Arizona State here. Show block, and then he's going to delay out. Really cool design. Wide open on the field against the pressure. Offensively, UCLA, not anything to write home about. They do some pretty cool stuff. This is a really great concept right here. So they run a ton of mesh. Chip Kelly loves the mesh. Typically, the mesh is this cross right here, right? So watch the wrinkle they put on it right here. This is a really cool play. Both these guys are going to come in just like I'm running mesh. And then we're back. We're whipping back out. Really cool. You can see the defensive back right here is trying to drive on that mesh. Slam on the brakes. Get back outside. Leave them. They hit some big runs in this game right here. Running through some tackles. Breaking out. Now, this guy does not look like he's the fastest dude. He gets caught here, but big run nonetheless. Quarterback, DTR, I believe is what they call him. On a little midline play, busts out a big run here. And he's an athletic guy. He can make you pay with his feet. And the USC defense, they're kind of aggressive. New defensive coordinator this year, I believe. Forced some turnovers against Washington State and really blew the game open. Here's one here early. You see they obviously got some athleticism on defense. This guy rushes, drops back, tips it to himself. Hurdles a dude. And then here, they're just playing tight man coverage. Quarterback tries to fit it in there. You jump it for an easy pick to keep the blowout going. So this game is probably the toughest one of the week. When you look at talent and things like that, USC's got the more talented team on paper. The the -3 line, I think, kind of threw some people. They thought it'd be a little bit higher. UCLA does some interesting stuff on defense that I think might give USC trouble. But push comes to shove, I got to make a pick here. I probably lean to USC. Just the talent, the better quarterback. But I wouldn't be shocked to see the UCLA defense kind of give them some problems with that blitz and those looks. So that's something to watch for if you want to kind of wait in game. How is the UCLA defense? Are those looks confusing USC? Is the quarterback, having problems with it? He maybe throws some interceptions, but that could be something at halftime they switch and maybe USC would be good in the second half. But that's kind of what I'm looking for. Is UCLA going to use that funky stuff on defense to get some picks, get some interceptions, or cause some confusion? But I think I'd lean USC still. Thanks for watching. I'll be back next week with Collin for Conference Championship Week. We should have a bunch of good games to go over. That'll probably be a longer episode, I imagine. This one's going to be a little bit shorter than normal. No Collin here to take up airtime. So we'll get out of here. Good luck this weekend.